Superman Prime 1 million. You probably heard about this character, right? Supposedly the most powerful version of Superman ever, pretty much God, and in terms of power, second only to the Presence. But is any of this true? What up people on the internet, Edwin here, and in this video we will analyze this character's appearances, feats and powers to debunk all the claims made about him and discover just how powerful he really is. This is an in-depth analysis of Superman Prime 1 million. Superman Prime 1 million is in fact the Superman that you and I are familiar with. You know, the one that landed on a farm as a baby, the one that wears his underpants in the outside, and the one that was killed by Doomsday. Yeah, that one. The only difference is that this is that version of Superman, but in the very distant future. Here's the story. It's the end of the 21st century, or the year 2100, and everybody Superman knew is dead. His friends and loved ones died from age, but he's still around. This makes him understandably sad, and eventually he decides to leave Earth and travel across the universe. After Superman leaves, the protection of Earth remains in the hands of Superman Secundus. The comic book calls him an heir of the original Superman, presumably his son. This is the beginning of what in the future will be known as the Superman Dynasty. As the name implies, the Superman Dynasty are a bunch of Kryptonians, all descendants from the original Superman. In the 67th century, or the year 6700, one Superman married the queen of the fifth-dimensional imps. I'm not gonna get into too much detail as to what are the fifth-dimensional imps, because that's not important to the story. All you need to know is that they can alter reality. Moving on. Then, around the 700th century, or the year 70,000, the original Superman returns to Earth again. He moves his Fortress of Solitude to the center of the sun, promised to power up all his descendants from his fortress, and stays there for 15,000 years. After the 15,000 years have passed, Superman Prime is coming out of the sun. To celebrate his return, the current Justice League goes back to the past and brings back the Justice League from the past to the future as part of the celebration. Then the original Superman comes out of the sun and everybody lives happily ever after. And that's the story of Superman Prime 1 million. Fun fact! People refer to this character as Superman Prime 1 million or Superman Golden, but both of those names are technically wrong. The story refers to the Superman as Prime Superman, because you know, he is the original one. The 1 million part of the name is because this character appears on a comic book story called DC 1 million, but every character in that story refers to him as Prime Superman. You probably don't care about any of this, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Moving on! Superman Prime 1 million as a character was created in 1998, and since then he has appeared only 3 times. Because of this, some people believe him to be featless or even weak, since he has never shown what he can do in a fight. However, this is technically wrong because sure, we haven't seen what he can do in a fight, but there's enough evidence for us to theorize what he at the very least should be capable of doing. For example, Superman Prime 1 million is a Kryptonian. That means he has all the powers any Kryptonian has. But remember, he's not any regular Kryptonian. This Superman is this Superman, but from the very distant future. Which means that any feats and displays of power that this Superman has shown to be capable of can also be applied to this Superman, as they are the same character. And this Superman has shown to be strong enough to move planets, with some help, fast enough to go to the sun and back in less than 2 minutes, and durable enough to survive being in the middle of a collision between 2 planets. Also, remember the Superman Dynasty? When Superman came back to Earth, he promised to his descendants that he was going to power them up from his Fortress of Solitude in the sun. Quote from the comic: "He sought the current Superman, the millennial distant blood of his blood, and form a covenant. So long as his descendants will remain loyal protectors of his beloved Earth, so he will grant them powers far beyond any held by any meta-human. Ever." So that means that if a regular Kryptonian from the future is capable of doing something, Superman Prime should be capable of doing the same thing even easier. After all, he is the reason why Kryptonians in the future have their powers. If a Kryptonian from the future can do something because of Superman Prime, it's not unreasonable to think that Superman Prime can do those things too. So the question is, what can a regular Superman from the future do? Well, I present to you Kal Kent, a Superman from the 853 century that has claimed to be, quote from the comic, faster than a speeding tachyon, more powerful than the gravitational pull of a collapsing star, and able to leap from world to world in a single bound. Not only that, but he has claimed to be capable of freezing a red giant with his freeze breath and also capable of calculating billions of probabilities at once in seconds. Now the keyword here is claimed. He claimed to do all those things, but he never did any of those things. Of course, the reason why he didn't is because he was weak at that time in the story. Regardless, we as the readers don't have any reason to not believe him. He doesn't gain anything by lying. And you might be thinking that he probably was exaggerating, but here's proof that he really was not. At the end of issue number 3 of DC 1 million, Kal Kent opened a portal to go back to his timeline by punching time and space really hard. Let me repeat that again. He traveled through time by punching. And remember, all of this is because of Superman Prime. So Prime should be capable of doing all these things with ease. And we're not done yet, because on top of all of this, Superman Prime has a Green Lantern ring. Now, some people believe that this is a special Green Lantern ring because the comic refers to it as the Lost Power Ring of the Green Lantern. But the truth is that this is just a regular Green Lantern ring. The comic never mentions that this ring is different, and the reason why it's considered lost is because there's no Green Lanterns in the 853 century. But even if it's just a regular Green Lantern ring, Green Lantern rings are no joke. Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern who was part of the Justice League during the DC 1 million story, used his ring to contain a supernova. Remember, Green Lantern rings are powered by will. As long as you believe you can do it, the ring will do it. That's why Kyle Rayner was at his limit, because as he explains, he was holding the sun in his hands and that idea was too much for him. But what's impressive is that the ring itself never is shown to reach any type of limit, which means that any Green Lantern ring can withstand the energy equivalent of an exploding sun. And there you go. This is a theoretical bare minimum for Superman Prime. And that's the key word here, bare minimum. This is his 1%. This is what he should be capable of doing when he's not even trying. Pretty impressive, but maybe not as impressive as the things you can read about this character online. So let's just get to the meat of the video, because sometimes people don't like factual information. They just want blood. So let's start destroying all the claims made about this character, starting with 1. Superman Prime is omnipotent, a literal god as powerful as the presence. I just told you the entire story about this character, and I also speculated about how strong he could be at his bare minimum. So tell me something, does it sound like he's omnipotent? No? Well, because he isn't! And if you're still doubtful, here's definitive proof about it. Quote from the comic, "Things happen so fast, even I couldn't preserve your reality." Now, I know I'm not giving you the context of this panel. Don't worry, I'll explain you the story behind this panel later, but my point is that Superman himself is admitting here that there's things he can't do. If he is all-powerful, why would he say that there's things he can't do? And no, this is not the narrator talking, this is not another character, this is Superman Prime himself admitting that there's things he can't do. He's not all-powerful. Moving on. 2. He broke into the source wall and studied under the source itself. In the DC comics, the source wall is a physical barrier that prevents people from physically escaping the DC multiverse. And nowhere in this story does it say that Superman did that. That line doesn't exist. The closest thing to it is, quote from the comic, "He looked at someone who had gone so far as to crash the gates of heaven." Now, I don't know how can somebody confuse the gates of heaven with the source wall when they are two completely different words. And you might be thinking, oh Edwin, maybe they're two different words to describe the same thing. But no, they're not. The source wall prevents you from leaving the universe And the gates of heaven are literally the entrance to heaven, because heaven is a real place in DC Comics. Here's a map from the DC multiverse. This is the source wall, this is heaven. If Superman literally broke out of the source wall and then went to heaven, what he would have to do is get out of the source wall, go back in, and then fly to heaven. Why would he do that? So how about if instead of cherry picking one sentence, I read you the entire paragraph? Quote from the comic. Then, one day, at the turn of the 700th century, literally out of the blue, a hunted Ishmael drifted back to his adopted planet. No longer quite human, yet he had about him an air of deepest melancholy. He looked like one who had gone so far as to crash the gates of heaven, and still not found that for which he searched. This is clearly an analogy. The narrator, this robot lady, is just trying to convey the idea that Superman still felt sad about the death of all his loved ones. He traveled so far for so long, and yet he still was sad. That's what this is. But finally, let's say she was literally saying that Superman broke into the source wall. If that was the case, then she would have changed the name of Superman to Hunted Ishmael for one sentence for no reason. Why would she do that? So no, Superman did not break into the source wall. 3. He created a universe. This one is actually true. Really? Of course not! This is the panel used to justify this claim, but first I'm gonna show you the entire page. Hey look, it's that panel again. Now, let me tell you the story behind this page. There's this guy called the Atom who is a scientist, and one day he finds an anomaly in space. He tries to get closer to it to study it. Turns out the anomaly is the universe in which Superman Prime lives. He then gets teleported inside of the universe where Superman Prime is, and his universe gets destroyed in the process. Once he wakes up, he is greeted by Superman, who says, quote, "Welcome to my universe. I'm Superman. Things happen so fast, even I couldn't preserve your reality." As you can see, at no point Superman says that he made that universe. He's just greeting a person that comes from another universe to his universe. That's the equivalent of you renting a house, then inviting a friend to your house, and once your friend arrives, you tell him, "Welcome to my house." You didn't make the house, but it technically is yours because you live there. That's what this is. So no, Superman did not make a universe. Number 4. He has the power of the fifth-dimensional imps. No, one of Superman's descendants married the fifth-dimensional queen, and their sons inherit fifth-dimensional imp's powers. But that doesn't have to do anything with Superman Prime. Saying that Superman have fifth-dimensional imp's powers because some of his descendants in the future will have fifth-dimensional imp's powers is the equivalent of me saying that I won the lottery because one of my descendants in the future will win the lottery. Do you see why that's wrong? 5. He recreated Krypton, revived Lois Lane, and gave her an immortal body. Okay, this one is a long one, so let's go by parts. The recreation of Krypton is not made by Superman. The comic book specifically says that it was Our Man. This is Our Man, and he brought back Krypton by manipulating time. Look at him, he's doing it, right there. Lois Lane was revived by the Superman of the fifth dimension. Again, the comic book specifically states that it was him. Now about the whole Lois Lane having an immortal body, the comic book never states that she had an immortal body, but considering that part of the reason why Superman left Earth in the first place was because Lois Lane was dead, it's not unreasonable to think that if the guy was gonna bring her back, he would want to make sure that she won't age. So probably Lois Lane was brought back to life in a body that doesn't age. And that's an important distinction because there's a huge difference between not aging and being immortal. The comic book never states anything about Lois' body, so at the very best it will make sense that Lois Lane's body doesn't age, but she still could be killed. So to summarize, all of this? Wrong! Number 6. He is invulnerable to kryptonite and magic. No, he isn't. Number 7. No, I'm just kidding with you. The reason why Superman is not invulnerable to kryptonite is because Solaris, an evil sentient computer that is also a sun, planned to kill Superman Prime by using a kryptonite missile. Everybody in the story was worried that if the missile hit Superman, it would have killed him. Solaris had fought Superman Prime and a lot of his descendants for thousands of years. That means he's aware of all the abilities Kryptonians have, and he knew that Superman Prime had spent 15,000 years into the sun. Everybody knew that, and yet Solaris was super confident that if the missile hit Superman, it would have killed him. That means that no matter how much solar radiation Superman absorbs, he still can be killed by kryptonite. Now, on regards to magic, it's never mentioned if it can affect him, but since he still can be killed by kryptonite, I don't see why he couldn't be killed by magic. So the answer to this claim is...
Nope.
Number 7. He defeated Solaris with one attack. This is a claim that you normally hear more between people that read comics. The idea behind this claim is that by defeating Solaris with one attack, you have an idea of how powerful Superman Prime is. What they normally forget to mention is that before Superman showed up, Solaris had to survive an onslaught of superheroes. Some of them future versions of Shazam, and some characters with Kryptonian-like powers. And Solaris fought dozens, potentially hundreds of them. And then Solaris was forced to go supernova by Green Lantern. Essentially, he self-destruct. And after all of that, Superman Prime showed up and finished Solaris off with his Green Lantern. If anything, this just shows how resistant Solaris is. But no, Superman Prime did not defeat Solaris with one attack. Number 8. He has so many new powers that you just wouldn't believe it. This one, believe it or not, is actually kinda true. I know, right? Unfortunately, the explanation for this claim is really long, and this video is already long enough. So, if you are interested, I'm gonna leave in the description a very long and detailed explanation for this claim. But if you just want the short answer, yes, it is true that Superman acquired new powers during his travels across the universe. And finally, number 9, and my personal favorite, Superman Prime 1 million is the most powerful version of Superman ever made. Now, don't get me wrong, Superman Prime is really powerful, definitely in the top 10. But he's not at the top of the food chain. For example, Ultraman is physically stronger and the Quantum Superman is way more powerful. But if you are really curious as to which Superman stands at the very top, that definitely is the Superman from the Silver Age holding the Sword of Superman. Anyways, I'm just about done here, but before I go, I want you to appreciate this. Thanks to this video, you now have a whole bunch of useless information of a fictional character. And to store all that useless information, your brain probably deleted one of your memories from your childhood. Thanks for watching!
Drop it!